It's becoming common knowledge in the horror community that the hardest thing to apparently do is make a new entry in an already established franchise. That is, unless you're Child's Play, of course. And how they manage to keep doing watchable films with that concept, I may never know. Let's not dwell on why we've not got another Nightmare on Elm Street or Friday the 13th. Let's ask ourselves how? How does these Texas Chainsaw Massacre movies keep getting greenlit? Since the original Tobe Hooper masterpiece, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, almost every film to follow in the franchise is either a reboot or it totally feels like a reboot. I mean, two had some connections, but after that, it's really hard to find anything else that connects any film to the other besides Leatherface, and even he seems different in the films. The last time we got a Texas Chainsaw Massacre film, it was Texas Chainsaw 3D. Now, that was a film that was all over the place, and for some, it even takes a spot of the next generation as the worst entry in the whole saga of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I mean, this is a film that totally lost the concept of time and somehow had smartphones in a time period that shouldn't have had smartphones. And that's just naming one thing that the film did wrong. This film was a mess. But that being said, is it as big of a mess as the new Leatherface? While Leatherface doesn't have anybody very hilariously yelling, "Do your thing, cuz," it does seem to have a lot going against it. From the directors of Inside, you would expect a pretty good movie, and the trailer showed a lot of blood that led me to believe that maybe, just maybe, we'd have a worthy entry into the Texas Chainsaw Massacre franchise. But of course, that's not the case. Our first red herring probably should have been the fact that when the film was completed, it was shelved by Lionsgate until just recently when it was released on VOD. The film is a direct prequel to the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Now, if you have any knowledge of the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre, then you've apparently got one up on the directors of this film. If they had paid any attention to any of the character traits of the first film, they would not have made some of the key mistakes that this film makes. Key mistakes that any fan of the franchise will probably not be able to avoid. More on that in a second. The plot for Leatherface shows a reluctant child Leatherface in the 50s as the family is trying to get him to pick up the family tradition of murder and mayhem. As luck would have it, sometime down the road, Leatherface does help the family murder a girl. However, the girl just so happens to be the daughter of the town sheriff. This leads to him being sent away and sets forth the rest of the plot of the movie. And what I believe to be 10 years later, we join a young nurse named Izzy as she takes the job at the same nut house that Leatherface now resides in. It's not only a place just for crazy people, but a place for younger crazy people. Things happen. We meet a few characters. We kind of determine who Leatherface is. And then we also see what happens later on when Mama Sawyer comes in, tries to get him to let him go. From this, one thing leads to another. A group of kids escape. They take the nurse with them. They're on the run, torturing Izzy, and we have the sheriff bent on revenge coming after them, and he will stop at nothing until that Sawyer boy and his buddies are back in the crazy house. Now, you see, that might sound like a good idea, and it probably would be if it wasn't apparent that the directors have been spending a lot of time watching Rob Zombie's Devil's Rejects, because it feels just like we're watching The Devil's Rejects. Right down to the point where we're supposed to feel bad for the crazy people and hate the vengeful sheriff. There's a lot of unlikable characters in this movie. So many that we really need somebody to get behind, and I'm not sure Izzy does that much for us. I mean, she's cute, but character-wise, she's kind of stupid. But I don't want to spoil anything, so if you do want to watch it, I'll let you watch on your own and see if you believe if young Izzy is a strong enough lead or not. Plot-wise, the movie's a mess. There's a big giant red herring in the movie that I'm not going to spoil for you, but it totally catches you off guard, and not in the good way, but more in the, well, this is kind of stupid kind of way, because without going into spoilers, when we get this big reveal, and if you've seen it, you know what I'm talking about. You don't really see how this can connect to the other film. It seems like somebody should have thought that out a little bit better. Also, I went back and forth when I watched this movie on if I even thought that it felt like a film that could have been a theatrical release. And outside the gore, which is the only thing the film's got going for it, I see nothing that resembles a theatrical film. You might even think that this was a cheap knockoff, like that Metalface movie you see at Family Video or something, but it has the guy that now plays Iron Fist in it, so, I mean, that kind of adds some legitimacy to it, but not much. I mean, I wouldn't have a problem with a franchise horror doing, yearly straight to video movies. But this one has that feel without meaning to. And if it wasn't for the little bit of chainsaw play we get at the start of the film and at the end of the film, well, you wouldn't even think this was a Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie. Maybe that's why they went with the name Leatherface instead of actually adding a Chainsaw Massacre in the title. But as this one rolls along, it makes me even wonder if the people that made the film was even familiar with the material. I mean, Toby Hooper is the producer of this thing. Did he never read the script before it went into production? Did something get changed in production? It just doesn't make any sense. Like, take the old man, for instance. Remember him in the first film? Remember at the dinner table when he really wasn't all about murdering Sally? He was just kind of going along with it because he wanted to impress Grandpa? Well, he's here, he's younger, and he totally don't care to kill people. So, how does a little detail like that get ignored when making a new movie that's supposed to be the true prequel to the Texas Chainsaw Massacre? So, we get the gore that I mentioned, but besides that, we don't get nothing else, man. We get some Devil's Rejects being channeled. We get some terrible twists at the end that make absolutely no sense whatsoever. All in all, Leatherface is a mess. A horrible, awful mess. I mean, it may be worse than Texas Chainsaw 3D. And you may say, well, how is that possible? Well, 3D had at least one thing going good for it. But when it comes to this, we don't even have that. You know, if they can't make a better Texas Chainsaw Massacre film, which apparently it's real hard to make a film where a guy runs around with a chainsaw killing people, but I digress. If they can't get it right, maybe it's time to give the Saw a break for a while. Go on to something else. I don't know. Make a Chop Top film. I don't care. Just do something. Just try to figure out why the easy concept of a slasher is so hard for people to do these days. We don't care about the history. We don't care about the psychological trauma that the characters went through. We just want murder, mayhem, and a good bloody time. And if you're looking for that, then you need to look somewhere else because Leatherface has none of that. And Leatherface may be the worst horror film of 2017.